Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pro DJ Live. Today we have a brand new topic, and I have some news for you. Today I'm going to be playing around with Ableton 12.2, so the most recent update. I mean, to be fair, this is still in beta. It's a public beta. You can already download it. So I've been exploring a few of the new features and seeing how that is. Some of them are actually a game changer, and I'm going to show you in the context of our topic today, which is layering. So as you guys know, I will be obviously going through a demonstration of that very same topic today. However, you guys are welcome to interact. You're more than welcome. I mean, I would invite everyone to give me your opinions, give me some ideas, and let me know what you think about today's episode. So without further ado, I'm going to jump straight into Ableton and show you what I brought in. Obviously, as I've been promoting, as I keep promising every single week, I try to always bring a new style. So this is obviously about music production in general and about making music in Ableton, not necessarily the style. So trying to keep it varied. So today we have a completely new style. So let's dive into that straight away. So here we go. Right, so what we have here today is, I suppose that we could call this kind of like a dembo reggaeton kind of vibe. And I'm going to start with just making a quick mention to the fact that the vocals that are present in today's production are taken from a Splice sample pack. So I want to make mention to Sasha Wrist, which is where all the vocals are from here. And obviously the instrumental, the beat is all mine. And we're going to listen through these. It's only like 2 minutes worth of music, but I suppose the main idea today is to take something which is already produced, that is sounding okay, but maybe through layering we can improve our sounds, give them a little bit more oomph, a little bit more depth, a little bit more movement. So there's a few reasons why we can resort to layering, right? So we're going to see which instruments can be candidates for those kinds of processing. So let's have a listen. Well, start with having a listen, and then we'll start exploring these possibilities.
Dame de eso, papi, quiero darte un beso, o quizá más que eso, o quizá más que eso. Dime qué es lo que pasa, vente pa' mi casa, yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa, yo quiero desacatarme contigo, papi, perder el control contigo, papi. Dime, yo te digo, papi, ay papi, ay papi. Dime qué es lo que pasa, vente pa' mi casa, yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa, papi, yo me siento acelerada, siento que pierdo la noción. Papi, yo me siento acelerada, pégate más. Eres mi lugar favorito, ey pa, no me dejes sola ni un ratito. Contigo todo es una chimba, con nosotros nada entretenido. Dime qué es lo que pasa, vente pa' mi casa, yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa, yo quiero desacatarme contigo, papi, perder el control contigo, papi. Dime, yo te digo, papi, ay papi, ay papi. Dime qué es lo que pasa, vente pa' mi casa, yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa, pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa, qué pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa.
Okay, so there you have it. So this is the instrumental that we have for today. I mean, obviously the vocals, we might look into that and how layering can also be a way of improving the sound of the vocal, because what we have right now is just a single vocal. The vocals already came with some processing. It's already giving us a sort of a sense of space and a sense of movement. Maybe we can also look at that. But let's start maybe with the foundation of this beat, which I would say that is probably the drums, right? In a style like this, and across different genres, most electronic genres and most pop genres, you kind of want the drums to knock. You want them to have impact. You want them to have weight, and that's one of the things that I'm missing here. Maybe I might have done that deliberately, and that I've chosen a kick which does have a sense of punch, right? But I think it's lacking a little bit of depth in the low end, and obviously one of the ways that we can address that is to reach for an EQ and try to promote the frequencies that give us that exact same feeling, right? But I think in a case like this, let's just look at the kick drum right now. So this, we're talking about this very first track here at the top. Right, so it's punchy. There's a lot of a sense of knock, but I'm not getting that that low end, that is so driving in this type of music. Obviously, in combination with the 808 bass, I think it kind of salvages and it gives it, when they hit together, it kind of gives it a little bit more power. But still, layering could be one option to explore. So instead of having just one sound or trying to make that work that sound in a way that that we get that extra quality that we're looking for, maybe we can combine two samples, one that is giving us what we already have for in terms of knock and in terms of punch, we already have that, but maybe for the low end we can combine another sample. And there are a few ways of doing this, which essentially we're doubling that sound and blending those two sounds together. So let's look at how we can do that. Looking here at the kick, I suppose that probably the most immediate thing that you would imagine would be to duplicate, so Command D to duplicate, and you would duplicate this, and so we'd have the same MIDI, and then we would just choose a different sample to go in here. So that would be the most sort of obvious way of doing this. However, instead of spreading this across two tracks, we can maybe just use one track, and if we reach for the Ableton's instruments right here, we can find an instrument rack that we can add, and what this is going to do now, sorry, my bad. Command G, that's another way of doing that. When you already have something instantiated into the track, that's the way you need to do it. And now, as we can see here, we have, if we click on the chain list, we see that that we have just one layer right now. Well, we can add another layer by creating a new chain. This means that essentially we're going to have the same MIDI, but we can now add a second instrument here. And I guess that for that, we could just grab a drum rack, another one. There we go. So just dragging that here, and now we can try and find a sample that we want that complements this other sound. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna go here to my browser, to the library section, samples, and one of the things that Ableton 12 allows us to do is to narrow down our search here, our parameters, what we want to go for. So here we want to go for a kick. And we know that we want a one shot, so we can just go through different sounds. Obviously this could take ages, but see, one thing that I'm liking just as I'm landing on this sample here, I like the fact that this sound not only has that extra low end that I'm looking for, but also has a sense of space, right? You can hear the sound in the room, so maybe that could be something complementary. So I'm just going to drag this here to C1, which I imagine, no, it's actually C3, sorry, my bad. So C3 is the note that's being triggered, so I'm just gonna move this cell onto here. So bear with me 1 second. Where's C3? Anyway, my bad. Let me just, you know what? Easier if I just do it this way around. Find the octave that I'm looking for. That's C4. It's probably the bottom one. Ugh, I'm blind. C3, there it is. Okay, cool. So I just can drag it to here again. C3, there we go. Cool. So essentially now what's happening is we can, that's the original kick, and this is the other kick, right? So we can decide to hear one or the other. If we can solo them, we can mute or unmute them here, but we can also blend them in, right? So So see what I was mentioning in terms of the sense of space that we're getting. So it seems like this sound is in a room. Let's see if this works well in context.
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Bebé, vente pa' mi casa. Yo te espero sin nada.
Do you know what? I kind of like that. So in terms of the character, I'm happy with that. However, I feel like I should test the phase alignment of these two samples. What I mean by that, without getting too technical, is when you're putting two sounds together, sometimes the front end of these two, then the way that they align, might introduce some issues. Instead of, having a complementary sum of the two parts, what we get is a cancellation, which I think is what's happening, because when I hear one of the sounds and when I hear the other, it seems like, I'm expecting to have the attack and the body of the other the sound, so that these two qualities combined. However, what's happening is quite different. What's happening is that we have not as much low end as you could expect. So I'm just going to quickly grab a utility plugin here from just the stock utility plugin from Ableton. And I'm going to drag it I can drag plugins just to one of the chains. I'm going to add that to this drum rack here, and I'm going to flip the phase of this sound. And I'm going to test how this sounds like as I enable and disable this plugin.
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Bebé, vente pa' mi.
Not sure if that's apparent. Let's just hear the isolated drums. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. However, I'm still going to see if I'm going to leave this here because this might come in handy. I'm just going to try some other samples. I'm just going to go and use this little arrow here so we can cycle through different kick sounds. That's cool too. And when I find something that I like, I also go here to the utility to flip the phase and see which works best. See, I like the way that these two sounds are sounding together. We can add more layers if we want, but I think this suffices. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go with that.
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Bebé, vente pa' mi casa. Yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa.
And now that I have these two sounds together, so when we're adding plugins to either one of these two chains, it only affects one of the sounds. However, now I want to treat them as just a single thing. So any plugins that I put in front of that are going to allow me to process these two sounds as a single unit. So I'm going to add just my favorite EQ here, everyone's favorite EQ apparently, which is Fat Filters Pro Q, and still give a little bit of a boost here to around 50 hertz. And I might make this dynamic instead of just like a... Okay, cool. Something like that. And also a little bit of that top end there, which is going to help the clickiness come through.
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Bebé, vente pa' mi casa. Yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa. Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. ¿Qué pasa? Dime qué es lo que pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. Bebé, vente pa' mi casa. Yo te espero sin nada.
Interesting how EQ is kind of like, you're kind of like a painter in a way, because you can paint this sound in two different ways, right? We can either emphasize the clickiness, right, when I was reaching for that more sort of high mid region there. However, I also feel like it could match the style if we actually filter out a little bit of the top and remove a little bit of that. So I think I'm more inclined towards that, but there would be nothing wrong with keeping things the opposite way. So with a brighter, more clickier kick, right? But I'm gonna go with this. So jumping back into Ableton now. Let's go.
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Bebé, vente pa'.
Also going to add just a little bit of my favorite drum plugin here in Ableton, which is called Drum Bus. Probably I've mentioned this before. So Drum Bus, again, a lot of cool things here. There's 2 overdrives. Can even, instead of using the EQ here for the top end, I really like this filter, the built-in filter here.
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Ven, vente pa' mí. Dime qué es lo que pasa. Ven, vente pa' mi casa. Yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa. Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. ¿Qué pasa? Dime qué es lo que pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa.
Cool. So a bit more of punch, a little bit less top end, and 2 different flavors of saturation here. I think I don't want this to be 100% wet, so I'm blending in the unprocessed signal and a little bit of this processing that Drum Bus is giving me. So maybe give it around 60-something%. Nice. Okay, cool. Nice and tight, like that. Let's carry on. So moving on to the next sound here. I think the snare now. So now that we have a stronger kick, the snare feels like it's lacking a little bit of, highlight, of emphasis. And I guess that we could just turn it up a little bit. However, I also feel like it lacks, so the original sample, nothing wrong with it, but maybe it sounds, like it doesn't have much top end. So here we can have the opposite problem. And again, we could try and EQ this so we bring out the top end. However, I feel like maybe adding a second layer could help me give that other part of the spectrum by adding something that already has, instead of trying to salvage that from a sound that doesn't have much top end to begin with. So let's go back here and look at what we have here, because it's a different case from the kick. Here what we have is just individual audio files, right? So might prove to be a little bit more challenging when it comes to replacing the sound or doubling up this sound. So reinforcing the sound, I think that's the correct way to put it. However, there is a way that we can maybe just do this by converting audio to MIDI. So you can't really do it with finely chopped pieces of audio, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight these 4 bars, hit Command J to consolidate this into a new track, and then now as I right click, I'm able to find the option of convert drums to new MIDI track. This is a bit of a hit or miss. Not really sure what's going to happen, because sometimes it might misfire or mistrigger. So as I can see, there's a lot more MIDI notes than I wanted. So it kind of adds by default the 606 drum kit. So I don't want any hi-hats, and there's a few kicks here. So the way that this does is kind of tracks the waveforms and sees with the placement of where these are, and tries to create MIDI notes for that and try to associate what kind of sound it's listening, and then trigger that with the correspondent MIDI note. And I guess that now that we've got rid of the mistriggered sounds, that with the hi-hat and the kick, we're left with just snares. So let's see what that sounds like. I guess that's pretty evident how that kind of has an impact on the drum sounds, more specifically on the snare sound. So it's kind of adding that sense of sizzle, that kind of top end, right? I think I'm going to actually keep this. I mean, we could scroll through a few sounds, but I think I immediately like what this is doing. This is exactly what I was looking for. like an 808, 606, 707 snare that kind of has the more kind of sizzly and brighter kind of quality. So I guess that this maybe we can just add it very subtly. So I'm going to work on the blend of volumes of these two sounds. But once I'm happy, I think I'm going to decide to add it only on specific moments. So not throughout the whole song, maybe on, like on a drop or in a chorus. So when things get a little bit more intense, a little bit more heavy, then the sound of the snare is also beefed up by the second layer, right? So that's the reason for this layering. So it's not like the kick that kind of lacks or was lacking low end throughout the whole track. It's just, I think at given moments we can give more highlights to the snare by adding this other layer. So let's go back and do that right now. Okay. Cool. Here we go. So maybe let me just have a look at the structure. I have already I have some dummy MIDI clips here at the top. So instead of using the traditional locators, I sometimes like to do this because I get to color them, and this is visually can aid me sort of walk through my my arrangements. So I guess I probably want to have these. I'm just going to copy and paste. So holding down Alt to maybe the hooks. Maybe the bridge can also do with that, and the pre here. So not the whole way through. So maybe coming from here. Okay, so there's some different snares that I need to change here. I think there's one that was not supposed to be there. And then there's a few ones that are missing that I can just very quickly copy. So same thing here. Because I copied that from a different section. Some of the snares are not lined up perfectly. And there's one missing. Here. And here. Here and here. There we go. Same thing now. Maybe not yet. Also not here. Okay, so I'm gonna join these all together now, so Command J, because I feel like I want to have all the velocities be the same. So that's one of the other things that Ableton tried to track when it converted the audio to MIDI was different velocities. I think I want for this layer, I want the velocities to always be the same, and then I'll just play around with the volume and tuck this in the mix. And I think I just want to make this sample ever so slightly shorter. So I'm just going to reach here for the... I'm going to turn this into a one-shot instead of classic mode. And I'm going to play around with a fade out. Yeah, just make it a little bit shorter. At the end, I also want to remove those two, or maybe just have them be together with the samples that are playing. So just going to move that quickly here and duplicate that. There we go. Yeah, there we go. then that makes sense now. All right, so that's it for the snare. So 2 different ways of achieving our layering. One was through using an instrument rack and creating a different chain, and now we've converted audio to MIDI to make our lives easier. So that's it for drums. Now I think I might look at the bass, because here's the thing. So the bass is sounding great. I just grabbed this kind of buzzy and distorted 808 sound. But it's one of the things that it's pretty mono, and I wish that at some points, maybe not throughout the whole song, but I wish that I could give it maybe just a little bit sense of width at some points. And that's one of the tricky things, that when we are playing around with low-end based sounds like a bass or an 808, we don't really want to take or to mess with low frequencies too much. That's going to affect the precision and the way that that impact is going to be felt and heard. So we got to be careful of that. But if we do add a second sound that adds a bit more of mid-range information and top-end information, maybe we can play around with a stereo width and maybe trying to play around with a little bit of imaging and expand the sense of width of that sound. So let's jump into that. So I think that maybe not throughout the whole track, maybe just on the more sort of intense parts, like the hook here. So I guess what I'm going to do is just create... I think it would make sense to add an instrument rack here, because that would involve a lot of automation, and I think it's just going to be easier to either duplicate this track, and I think for that we're going to actually use one of Ableton's new features, or not. No, I was thinking about turning this into audio, but maybe we'll leave that for another sound. I think here we might want to keep the MIDI, just add a second sound. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do Command-Shift-T to create a new MIDI track, and Alt drag this MIDI region to a second track. So this is doing this in a more traditional way, I suppose. I'm thinking that maybe I want to add a synth-based sound, and I'm a huge fan of Moog basses. Classic, can't go wrong with those. When we did the episode on bass sounds, that was one of the things that I've mentioned, is the classic Moog sound. Can't get enough of that. So I'm not sure if it's going to be a right fit, but at least let's entertain the idea a little bit here in Ableton. So my favorite replica of the Minimoog is the one by Arturia. So I'm just going to drag it straight into this track, and here we have it. So it's probably not going to sound great or adequate from the bat. First of all, octave is not right, so I could transpose the MIDI, but I'm just going to be lazy and add a pitch plugin here to transpose this up an octave. 2 octaves, right? So that's not sounding great. But let's start working here a little bit on the sound design of this sound. Let's give it a bit of chorus to give us a bit of width. Let's see how that works together with the other sound. So change a little bit the attack. I'm slowing down the attack of the filter, so the kind of filter opens up a little bit more gradually. So we give this... Yeah, that's pretty cool. Bit of resonance. Let's play around with the contour to change a little bit the color of the sound. Not really sure what's going to be adequate, so I'm going to hear this in context. And I'm also going to duplicate this onto here. Or actually, just going to highlight these 2 and drag it down. I think that probably on this post-chorus situation, kind of like a drop of sorts. There's also some built-in delay. I wonder if that's going to work well there. feel like I also want a little bit more of decay on this.
Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. ¿Qué pasa? Dime qué es lo que pasa. Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. ¿Qué pasa?
So I kind of like it like this when the drop kind of hits, but before it might be a little bit too much.
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Vente pa' mi
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to automate the filter on this sound. So I'm going to tap A to get into automation mode. Click on the parameter. It's going to show me immediately the line that corresponds to that. And yeah, here's a new feature in Ableton. So you can actually, as you're hovering over, the beginning of this, if we just hit enter, it creates a little automation point, which is great. Really like this new feature.
Dime qué es lo que pasa.
So we're going to start from like fully filtered.
Yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa. Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. ¿Qué pasa? Dime qué es lo que pasa.
Not 100% sure about that. Maybe it's a bit too open for my taste. So
Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. ¿Qué pasa? Dime qué es lo que pasa.
and then fully close the filter towards the end. I think I'm happy with that.
Pasa. Dime qué es lo que pasa. ¿Qué pasa? Dime qué es lo que pasa.
Okay, I think this adds a bit of a sense of depth to the bass sound when it comes in. Let me just mute the vocals so I can have a little bit more of a notion of what's happening. So now that I'm happy with this, what I'm going to do is just put these two sounds together. So I'm going to group them, and I'm just going to directly transfer this compressor onto the group. And there's two compressors. I'm going to explain the reason why I have two of them rather than one. So they're responsible for two different things. The first one is keeping the dynamics in check, so making sure that the sound is leveled out, so it's compressing the sound itself. And the second one is sidechained to my kick, so the kick is making the sound duck. So it's a way to lock in these two sounds together. We've already established that in previous episodes. So compressing these two sounds together and then compressing or ducking it via the kick trigger. I'm going to do one thing on this sound. Although there's residual low end there, I'm going to add an instance of Wither, so it's a really great freeware plugin. I've already mentioned this before, I think. The cool thing about this is that we can decide to filter out the low end. Not in the sense that we get rid of the low end, but we're making that low end mono, so not affected by the width, and then we add the stereo imaging only to frequencies above a specific crossover point. In this case, I'm going to take it up to close to 200, around there, and then everything else is going to explode on the stereo field, as I love. So I have a much more dynamic bass sound here at this point. Cool. Let's carry on. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to talk about. Anyway, carrying on to the keys. So here again, what I have, and now I'm gonna talk about a new feature in Ableton, which I'm really excited about, which is bounce in place. So bouncing in place is a great feature I've been wanting, and if you're an Ableton user and if you've had a look at other softwares that have this feature for such a long time, I mean, we did have freeze and flatten, but it's not quite the same thing. This is a really exciting one. You want to quickly render either a full track or just a little portion of it to process it any differently, or to just commit to that into audio. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to keep the original, but I'm going to add another layer. As this last chorus hits, I wanted to have another layer that I'm going to base it off of this mallet sound that is one of the most important sounds in this production. So let's have a look at that. What I'm talking about is this here. Which, if you're curious, this is a one shot that I also grabbed from Splice, and then I'm running it through a bit of RC20, so lo-fiing it as much as possible. So giving it a bit of noise, a little bit of wobble, distortion, and space, which is reverb. And then my favorite secret sauce plugin, the Oxford Inflator, whenever you want to just give more presence. This just makes, sounds really stick out in the mix, and I absolutely love it. Anyway, so what I was mentioning was I'm just going to highlight this last bit and right-clicking on it. I'm going to do bounce to new track, and this is going to let me have this be turned into audio, right? So exactly the same as we had here at the top. And what it does by default is it mutes the original, but I don't want to mute the original because I want to layer this. And one of the things that it's a kind of like a trademark of my production style. I really like to add layers of higher octaves, or higher or lower. But in this case, I think it's going to be cool to say grab this here and bump it up by 12 semitones, which equals an octave. If you know your music theory, you'll know this. So essentially this is going to turn it into that. And that's cool because it's going to give it a sense of thickness, of extra thickness when this part hits. So that's all good. However, let's see if we can make this any more interesting. And as you can see here, if we double click on the audio clip, there's a few warping properties, things that we can change, like that. Like I transposing this sound by how many semitones you want. So I transpose it by 12 semitones. And I think ideally, for a sound like this, the correct mode or algorithm would be complex. So beats is more suited for drums and percussion in theory. However, there's a feature that I really, really like in beats, which is the fact that you can choose a subdivision, right? For instance, 8 notes. And especially when you put it on forward mode and you play around with this percentage here, especially as we reduce it. So we get a gated effect, which is pretty cool. Let me just turn this up a little bit. Let's try 16th. Love that. That's exactly what I was looking for or hoping for. Meanwhile, okay, sorry, just lost connection to my mouse. I'm very unfortunate there, but hopefully it'll come back to life. And no, sadly. Okay, hang on, guys. Some technical difficulties, but I do have a spare one just here, so it's all good. Just bear with me 1 second. And we're back in. Okay, cool. As I was saying, happy with this. So that's kind of like two roles that this is playing. So it's adding that higher layer and also adding a sense of movement, of rhythm that is done by this this warping, this or this gating effect that we've created here. I think I like it pretty extreme, to be fair. Almost forgot about the vocals. Let's hear this with vocals. Maybe it doesn't make sense with vocals. All right, really happy with that. So we have time to look at vocals, right? So I think that that's another cool thing to explore, especially due to the fact that you know, there's only one lead vocal, so you know, this is an a cappella that I've grabbed from Splice, as I said from the beginning. However, it will be cool to be able to add a bit more thickness, a bit more of emphasis that normally you'd get in the studio by recording, you know, doubles, recording harmonies, recording ad-libs. But here we don't have any of that, so we might need to get a bit more creative and manipulate the vocals in order to get that extra layer. So let's see what we can do here. I'm gonna focus on this section. The previous section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the vocal from this section. Again, right click and do a bounce to new track. Right, so this is going to print. There's a bit of processing going on in this vocal. Nothing fancy, but a bit of EQ, a bit of compression, de-essing, and soothe. If you don't know about this plugin, you have to. It's amazing. And now that I have this new vocal here, I'm going to unmute the top one because I want it to still be there. And I guess like one of the popular things to do in, you know, modern day production is, you know, adding a low vocal, so pitching this down by, you know, an octave. You know, this kind of effect. I think for here we do need complex. So, you know, works like a charm, nothing wrong there. However, I wish that, you know, we can add some other harmony lines, right? And there's a few plugins that allow you to do that. One that I've been using for a lot of time, so I'm going to let you in on a little bit of my, you know, a personal secret. Something that I've been using for a long time. I know that there are other options out there. I use this plugin by Eventide called Quadravox that allows me to create harmonies based on the key of the song, which in this case is C minor. Haven't mentioned that, but we're working in C minor today. So let's try that. I'm gonna create yet another track here. I'm just gonna duplicate this one. So duplicate the track itself and bring it back to the original pitch. And I'm gonna find Quadravox. There it is. Load it onto this track here. Actually, do you know what I like to do? This is my method. So before getting into this guy, I'm going to bring in any autotune plugin that you have. And I've been really, although I've traditionally used other third-party ones, I've been really getting into AutoShift, which is something that has been introduced on Ableton Live 12 as well. So it's Ableton's stock autotune, but there's a few bells and whistles that I like to play around with. One of the things is, this is one of the things I like to do with these fake harmonies. So first things first, just set the scale, C minor, and gonna make this as quick as possible, so as robotic as possible. And now, as I open Quadravox, I also need to make sure that my my key is correct. So again, C minor. And the cool thing now is if we set this to 100% wet,
vente pa' mi casa. Yo te espero sin nada.
is that it's going to give us that very same interval, right?
Dime qué es lo que pasa. Vente pa' mi casa. Yo te espero sin nada. Dime qué es lo que pasa.
But it kind of sounds a bit chipmunky. That's the problem, right? So it's giving me the right notes, but not exactly the a very convincing vocal. So here is where playing around with the formant shifting on auto shift could be a really cool thing. So it's not affecting the pitch at all. It's only affecting the timbre of the sound. So if you have to, like, say two different people singing the same melody, they're going to sound different because someone has a deeper voice or a higher voice. But the pitch itself is the same, but we're going to change the character of that vocal, so we can try to make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more different from the original singer. So let's see how that sounds like. Okay, here we go. Right, that sounds a little bit more convincing now. Okay, so happy with that. And I think I want to add or try at least a few more harmonies. And I'm not sure if I want to keep this whole thing, but in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is just bounce to new track. So this has rendered this third. I think it was a third, right? Yeah, third. So I'm gonna just to make sure that I know where I'm at. Okay, this is a third, and I'm gonna keep it. I'm going to mute this bottom one. Sorry, my bad. This is the third. Undo. This is the third. And here I'm going to play around with other intervals. I'm going to bring the format back to the center, and let's see. Let's keep going. Let's try going down, maybe. Like the sixth as well. I think I'm going to want to take the format up this time around. Okay, happy. I'm going to use bounce to new track to render that sixth now. So this is the sixth. Maybe that is enough already, but just to be sure that I'm not missing out on an interesting vocal line. Again, bringing the format back to the center. Let's see if the seventh works well. It's one of my favorite intervals. We can try, instead of going lower, to going higher. So. Do you know what? I think I'm happy with just these two. So now I'm going to get rid of this actually, and I'm just going to blend these sounds in. That's the low one. And I wish this was a double, so I only have one, but I'm going to create a pseudo stereo effect by using the most underrated plugin in Ableton Live, which is Align Delay. And so what I'm going to do this, or going to use this for, is just to delay the right channel from the left channel, and that is going to create an illusion of two voices rather than one. Sorry, that's gonna go on here. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Okay, cool. So maybe I'm also gonna now use these ones and copy them too. Which is my Spanish is terrible. Dime que lo que pasa. There we go. So let's put that there. Oh, sorry, that's the second dime que lo que pasa. So I'm just gonna copy this onto here. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna just remove the chops. Nice one. Cool. Happy with that. So we're almost done. So there's one thing, another layering thing that I like to do, which is not necessarily duplicating a sound and just running it through, adding a second layer necessarily. I like to add sometimes, especially on choruses or on important bits of lyrics, that I add a sound and another instrument which is reinforcing that. So essentially we're going to double up with a completely different sound. So I'm thinking a lead sound could be cool to highlight the main hook. So let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to just quickly create a MIDI track here in Ableton, and because I've talked about my love for the Mini Moog, I'm going to bring it back, but I'm going to explore. Maybe because we don't have much time, I'm going to go for my favorite sounds, favorite lead sounds. So I really like these. Where are they? These Keith sounds. Pretty cool, these presets. Okay. That could be cool. So what I'm going to do here is very quickly just realized that I've unplugged my MIDI keyboard to have the mouse working, so nothing wrong with that. I can just draw it in, I suppose. I think I want it to go here. So it's much higher, but it's G for sure. Maybe even higher, I think. Cool. Maybe even higher, I think. So let's shift up and up arrow. Go. Super high. Okay, so just gonna change the sound a little bit. I'll just run through a few different presets to see if there's anything that I like more than this. Change the note to match the exact note that was being sung there. But now going back to the plugin, I'm gonna tweak a few things. Or just let me see if there's a... Not bad. Couldn't hear that one. Okay, we're gonna add a bit of glide to these sounds so they slide a little bit more. I think there's a note that I'm missing there. Oh, now it's right, and let me bump this up. Okay, now that's better. Make these notes longer. Okay, so there's a bit of overlap, so the glide is more evident. So let's see what things we can alter here. Make the attack a little bit slower. And I don't really like the built-in delay, so what I'm going to do is actually take the delay. I'm going to add the new auto filter to remove a little bit of the... Well, actually, let's try the new DJ mode. That's cool. On top of that, I'm going to add... Do you know what? My favorite... I'm letting you guys in on a lot of my secrets, guys. I mean, that's what I've promised from the get-go, so here I am. Keeping my word. Yeah, this is one of my... So this replica, this is a delay plugin from Native Instruments, and there's this preset that I start from a lot of my shimmer sounds. I'm a huge fan of shimmering sounds. So look at what this thing does. Goes on forever. That's pretty cool, and you want something to be really drowned in a shimmery effect. So now here, so it's a different melody there. I think I'll need to bypass that plugin just as I'm figuring out the melody, otherwise it will be hard to tell. Yeah, but that's it. Just make these notes a little bit shorter. But that's exactly it. Now bring back the shimmer. And I think I want to add the... I'm going to move the filter to after the plugin, so I also filter out a bit of the lows from the reverb itself. Okay, cool. That's better. And let's see if we now grab this and move it onto here. Nice one. Cool. Let's have a final listen to this last section, which is where I've added most of my layers. So yeah, before we wrap this up, there we go. And there you have it. Hopefully this was a good way to illustrate how, I mean, you don't always need to resort to layering, but here I think we've explored the really interesting examples of how we, with a kick we've added more low end, with a snare we've added a bit more top end, with a bass line we gave it a bit more width. We give a bit more thickness to the keyboard sample by adding an octave and a bit of movement as well. With the gating effect, with the vocals, we managed to inject some harmonies where there were no harmonies to begin with. And then lastly, how we can really accentuate a hook by having an instrument play the same melody together. So yeah, that's it for today. In 2 weeks time we're gonna have a new episode, so let us know what you would like to see here at Pro DJ Live. This is me signing out. Have a good one. Take care.